Files and browsers. HTML, you'll see, and this maybe is something that you've never really thought too much about, but the whole entire world of computing revolves around the notion of a file. Right? Files are everything. Everything is a file on a computer in some level, in some way, and everything that you'll deal with is always a file. We have different names for those files. When the file is a word processing thing that I type in and I print out, what do we call that file? Yeah, a document, right? Although that word document is really vague and fuzzy, right? It's a term we get to really define. If I put stuff in rows and columns and I use Excel, what do I call that file?
Spreadsheet.
Spreadsheet, right? If I put them in PowerPoint and I make slides out of them, what do I call it?
Presentation.
A presentation, right? They're all files though, aren't they? If I put HTML in it and I put it on the World Wide Web, what do I call it? A page, right? A web page. So they're all files, and it really is to your advantage to see behind those names and see the commonality. So this is a perfect example of, I'm sure you're ready for this to be slammed back together again, right? Is an Excel file really any different than a Word file? They have very different purposes, but they're all files. Everything is files. We put all of our information segmented into files. In this case, we call those files web pages. So when I say web page, you should think file, right? Because that's what it is. And that's going to help you understand how to work with it, especially when it comes to making websites. Okay, so a web page is just a file with HTML in it, right? That's it. That's all a web page is. It's a file of a particular format. It's a file that has the HTML format to it. And we take that and we type our HTML into it however we decide to do that, and we store it on our hard drive, and we give it an HTML or an HTML extension, and voila, we have a web page. And that's really all there is to it. It's that simple. Then there's the browser, right? And so I mentioned in our markup lecture the difference between the markup and the interpreter. And in HTML, the markup is in the file, and the interpreter is the browser. Okay, so that interpreter is the thing that reads the file and displays it on the screen for you. So what's the interpreter for a document, for a Word document? What's the interpreter? Microsoft Word. What's the interpreter for a spreadsheet? Excel. Okay, this is another very common idea in computing. You got the file with the file format, and then you have the interpreter that reads the file format, decides what to do with that file, and then does something with it. Right? For every application, there's a kind of file that goes with that application that the file knows the structure of, and the application knows what to do with it. The application is the interpreter. In this case, the application is the browser. The browser opens that HTML file, reads that HTML file, and decides what pixel to put at what position on the screen. And that's what's going on with the browser. So you should always pull those two things apart. If you don't pull those two things apart, you're going to constantly be tripping over where is the problem, what's going on here. So I just had a bug come up on the listserv, and it was when I click on, imagine if this happened to all of you guys, I'd just be tearing my hair out more than I've already torn out. When I click on the "This is my final answer" checkbox, the screen scrolls to the top. Right? Just by clicking on a checkbox on the website, the screen scrolls to the top. Now, what's going on there? Is that a problem with the HTML markup, or is that a problem with the browser? Could be either, but very likely, since all other browsers besides the beta Internet Explorer browser don't do that, it's probably a problem with the browser. The interpreter somehow, for some reason, in some weird situation that they never tested, does that when you click on a checkbox for some reason in their code. Okay, similarly, let's not go there. Okay, so what I want to say here is HTML pages are in files. They're stored on your hard drive. Browsers open those files and they know how to display them. There's two different things going on. You can write HTML all day long without any browsers, but you're never going to display the HTML in a way an end user wants to see it without using a browser. And suffice it to say, if you don't already know, that every browser has its quirks, every browser has its kind of weird things, and to try and write HTML code that, by the way, HTML was theoretically invented to transcend the dichotomy between, for example, the Mac operating system and the PC operating systems, where things aren't compatible. And so theoretically, supposedly, when we created HTML, all of a sudden all the platform dependence in our code was supposed to go away because HTML is platform independent. Is that true? No, it's not true at all. If you've ever tried to create a website that runs equally well on not only Internet Explorer, but Firefox and Safari and Netscape and whatever else comes along, you realize that we're still completely platform dependent. And the HTML code that you write is HTML code that, if it runs on multiple platforms, likely has a lot of things that say, oh, well, if you're this platform, do this. If you're that platform, do that. Right? So we're nowhere near platform independence with HTML, even though it's supposed to do that for us.